Welcome to the Regenerative Agriculture, Thriving as a Modern Rancher, the podcast for ranchers and land stewards looking to build healthy land, profitable businesses, and a fulfilling life. Join us as we explore regenerative practices and holistic management to help you thrive in today's ranching world. Today I have Joanne, otherwise known as Jojo, because that's what she likes to be called. And we met a couple weeks ago at American Farmland Trust Women on the Land. And I so thoroughly enjoyed talking to her that I invited her to have another conversation. And what I'd like to focus on is to have you share, Joanna, your journey into what you're doing. Where you didn't grow up doing this. How did you become the woman you are today with respect to being a land steward?
Well, so let's see. I did grow up with horses, so I grew up around land and property and very much enjoying being outside. But that was not a money earning enterprise. That was just my grandparents' place to get away. So the experiences that I had in the past with agriculture were very much on the hobby end of things. Fast forward many years, and in about 2018, my husband and I decided that we wanted a piece of property, someplace that we could get away. Both of us worked in public, or still, he still works in public safety, work in public safety, and having that outdoor sanctuary is relaxing for both of us. So we set some parameters for what we were looking for, found a piece of property that we both fell in love with and met all those parameters. But it was something that you had to be able to see the beauty in it. Most people would look at it and have thought that it was horribly overgrown and just too much trouble. But we could see the beauty behind it. And so we ended up purchasing it. And that was supposed to be a 15-year retirement plan. Someplace we could go hang out on the weekends, vacations, whatever, slowly work into clearing things and making it what we wanted it to be. And so that was the summer of 2018. And it was roughly 75 acres. And we literally closed on a Thursday. And that Saturday, we came out to look at the property and brought a friend of ours with us. And hey, look what we did. Isn't this amazing? And a truck pulls up in the driveway. And he said, "Hey, I see y'all just bought this place. I own the property next door and I'm getting married and I really need to sell it. I'll make you an offer you can't refuse." And wow, okay. I wasn't really sure how that was going to happen because I felt like we were stretching, doing what we did. And sure enough, he made an offer we couldn't refuse. And so basically overnight, our property doubled. And when you have a large piece of property, what's the first thing you do? Well, we have to get some cows. So I had a couple of horses already. And growing up with horses, our, I guess, forage of choice is always Bermuda. Let's have some nice, perfect Bermuda, bright green, all one height pasture, rolling fields, gorgeous. And that was our plan. We fully intended to clear everything, sprig it in Bermuda, and call it good.
So if I could interrupt, what was the
Absolutely.
property? What infrastructure was there? What infrastructure was not there?
There was some exterior fence.
Okay.
There was some exterior fence. There was some that was questionable at best. We now had two houses, neither of which they were currently both being habitated. I would not have recommended it. I will say the first piece we bought, that house was what I would equate to a hunting cabin. It had been built in 1910. It had electricity and it had water, but it was rough, very, very rough. The other house had been built in 1932, equally as rough. In East Texas, back in the early 1900s, they built houses on boat arc stumps, basically. Those were your piers. A lot of those had rotted away, so parts of the house were falling off. We had a couple of ponds, and we had a whole lot of locust and eastern red cedar. Both of the properties, the first section had been set stocked for, I would say, probably the last 25 years on a lease situation. Prior to that, it had been strictly cotton farmed. It was blatantly obvious by the terracing that had been done. The second piece of property was something that was a combination of set stock and hay ground, just
Okay.
hayed repeatedly with zero inputs. And so our idea of regeneration at that point for us, like I said, was to clear off all the undesirables, sprig it in Bermuda, and run with it. And somewhere in that process, believe it or not, I actually had a contract with NRCS for Equip to do all those practices. And somewhere in that, fooling around on Facebook or something, I ran across the term regenerative agriculture. And I'm a nerd at heart. And so I dove down that rabbit hole. And a lot of the practices made sense. And so the concept of how things, quote unquote, used to be when bison roamed the prairie and you would graze something, move on for a year plus, it would have the chance to regenerate, and that herd animals tend to eat competitively, so they're going to eat less selectively and eat more of what you have out there that typically they wouldn't if given the choice. That was enticing to me because, one, it was a much lower cost option and it was a more sustainable option. The more that I have read, learned, watched, and tried, I have determined that Bermuda will do everything that you pay it to do. It is a very input heavy grass. Yes, it's fairly drought resistant, but beyond that, it requires a ton of fertilizer to be maintained, and it will happily be outcompeted by less desirables if Bermuda is your desired forage. We took a complete right turn. And I will also say my husband grew up in agriculture. He grew up a farmer, very, very traditional row crop. Let's till everything, let's spray everything. The bigger the tractor, the better. And once I had learned enough about regenerative agriculture and sustainability, I went to him one day and I said, okay, you got to hear me out because this is going to sound a little hippy dippy, but just listen. And I started explaining to him the concepts of high density grazing and how that affected the grass. And he looked at me like I was crazy, but he also knows that, like I said, I'm a nerd at heart and I research everything. And he said, let's try it. And so at the time, we lived not on the ranch, we lived off the ranch and had about an acre and a half. And we decided to get a handful of sheep and we started rotating around our acre and a half with polywire, and it was blatantly obvious. There was no question that it was effective, even in that short-term test. So we agreed that was the route we were going to go. And it has been a journey, to say the least, because no day is the same, no season is the same, no ground is the same. And so you learn to be flexible and manage
Adaptable.
things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But we've been at this now, let's see, almost 8 years. And the changes have been amazing, absolutely amazing.
So what have you seen? What changes have you seen?
The types of forage that we have coming up are changing, still changing every year. I think for the most part, they're changing for the better. We are still kind of chasing our tail on a few things. If anyone's ever dealt with honey locust, those are, in my opinion, the scourge of the earth. I know that there are a lot of people that like them because they are nitrogen fixers and their seed pods are good browse for wildlife. And I don't mind one or two, but they also cause just crazy issues with damage to equipment, damage to animals, and taking up valuable grazing area. I actually had one of the grazing specialists from NRCS out a couple
Brandon
months
Bain?
ago, Brandon,
Yeah.
and he, again, his knowledge of grasses is impressive because this was mid-January And I was like, look, it's all brown and dead. I don't know what we're going to do. He's like, oh, no, I can still tell what it all is. It's just brown and dead to me. But something that I thought was in very, very poor condition, he was able to look at and go, no, these are all mid-successional grasses. They're just not palatable ones for cows. We've actually managed to improve the ground considerably with really very little input monetarily. Now, we did spend a fair amount of diesel clearing trees and things like that, but we've also been able to, we live in an area that's got a lot of what they call blackjack oaks. They're water oaks. In fact, the town I live in is Cumbie, and its old name was Blackjack. That was one of the things we fell in love with about the property to start with, was some of the trees were so big that it would take 3+ men to get their arms around them.
That's
But they were
amazing.
so overgrown with these less desirables that they were declining in health. And so that was one of the first things that we did, was go and try and clear them some space so that they could recover.
That was the first year. What were your actions that first year, and what were you seeing happening as you eliminated the overgrazing and the set stock?
So the first year we had a lot of clearing that we did because we had tons and tons of honey locust and eastern red cedar. We came in with various pieces of equipment. There was a lot of trial and error there too, but we eliminated all those trees by the root. That way we could eliminate as much regrowth as possible. And then also went into some of our more forested areas and tried to thin some of those so that, again, those nice big oak trees could thrive. Not having any cattle on there, we had a lot of growth. It wasn't necessarily anything growing that I was excited about. It was everything from the wild climbing roses to ironweed to buttercups, you name it. It was something that most people would look at and go, "Ew, that's a lot of weeds." And it was. It was a lot of things that I was concerned about because you don't expect that you can take that without some sort of herbicide or replanting or some sort of mechanical intervention and change that. We also, I don't remember if it was, I don't think it was the first year, but probably in the second year, we did also burn. There was a lot of prescribed fire. I can pretty much guarantee you this place had probably never been burnt. If you've never burned, also a very scary adventure to start with. But once you realize what benefit that has, and again, you're going back to what naturally happens on a prairie. Fire is a natural occurrence in our area, typically every 2 to 4 years historically. And that sometimes was from lightning. It may have been from back when Native Americans lived in this area. They would intentionally set fire. Sometimes that was just to clear space. Sometimes it was to rush out wildlife for hunting. But that eliminates a lot of that woody growth that's trying to happen, whether it be brush or trees. Those nice, big, healthy trees, it does not affect. It actually promotes growth for them. It's being that we've never done this before, it was really easy to try new things because we didn't have to subscribe to this is the way we've always done it and we know it works. So that's what we're going to do. We've never done it. So why not try something new? We, in about, let's see, 20, I guess it was 2020, we had the opportunity to buy the property across the county road. This property was a dairy for, I don't even know how many years, a very long time. And so now we were dealing with an entirely different type of property because now it had been managed. It had been managed a lot more conventionally, but the ground was night and day. There was a good stand of grass. Granted, it was a lot of Bermuda, but good stand of grass, a lot of organic material in the grass or in the ground, in the soil. And so that was easy to just step into and go. Put some animals on it, rotate them around. It just got better. It continues to get better every year. The initial 150 acres across the county road, again, it gets better every year, but it is definitely something that you have to trust the process and you have to be willing to adapt because like we said, no piece of ground is the same, no plant life is the same, no season is the same, no soil is the same. And so there's no perfect textbook step-by-step procedure, do exactly this and you'll get exactly this result. So you have to be willing to get out there, actual boots on the ground, and really look at what's there and manage based on that. Because just looking out across the pasture and going, oh, it's green, it must be good, isn't necessarily the case. Being able to stand on a piece of ground and look straight down, if it's not green everywhere, you have work to do. It's sorry, I'm rambling at this point.
No, that's great. I'm letting you run with it.
Yeah.
No, that's fabulous. So I did want to ask, the original 150 acres was very woody. So by default, the soil is more fungal. You know about that fungal bacteria balance. When
So
we tend towards woody, it's more fungal. And when we eliminate those trees, the soil needs to catch up.
the area that was more hardwood type trees, absolutely, I would agree. I will also say though that soil was in far better condition than most of the rest of the soil because you had all of that leaf litter that for years and years had broken down there. Once we cleared out a lot of that understory, the grasses have come in really well. Now that we are able to get a little bit of sunlight in there, the grasses are coming in really well. The vast majority of the center of the pasture, if you will, was eastern red cedar. I will say that cedar tends to be fairly acidic,
Yes.
and that was an issue. As you started to clear those trees out, it was very apparent that anything under the drip line, which is basically the how far the leaves go out on the tree or the branches go out on the tree, there was no grass growing. And when you coupled that with the amount of water that those red cedars pull out of the soil, I didn't think we'd ever get anything decent to grow over there. But I would say within about 3 years, it definitely has changed.
What was the transition of species coming up after you did the clearing? Was it mostly annuals or weeds?
So the predominant grass that was there when we started was a old world yellow blue stem.
Okay.
Not the worst thing, but definitely not the best thing.
Yeah.
Since then, I've started seeing some cool season annuals come in. Your rye, some wild oats, some foxtail, some barleys. I would be inclined to believe that some of those are volunteer and some of those are probably left in the seed bank from back when it was row crop. I do have a lot of locusts that keep trying to pop up. That's an ongoing battle. I'm getting now a lot of exciting things. You start seeing things like partridge peas, Illinois bundleflower, lots and lots of clovers, various kinds of clovers. I don't really have a lot in the way of native species grasses. And I actually had this conversation with Brandon, the grazing specialist, that in this amount of time, because it's been about 8 years since we've started this, that I have, like I said, these mid-successional grasses, but I'm not getting any of the really desirable palatable grasses. They're probably not there. They're probably not going to be in that seed bank. Either they have been carried off through erosion through the years or just pushed so far down in the soil after years and years of tillage that they can't come to the surface. So I think a lot of what I'm getting is stuff that has come out of either just wildlife, birds, things carrying it in, or things that have come out of hay that's been unrolled up there.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I want to encourage you that high density and recovery will allow for some of the seed that we don't think is in there to show up. And I have several case studies of colleagues of mine who have managed land, the same piece of property for 20 years, and they thought it wasn't available, but they used a million pound density on a very small area, and they allowed it to recover for a year up in Kansas, and they started seeing eastern gamma grass come up
Yeah.
like
We
like from nowhere.
yeah, we so to that point, we are moving that route this year in, or I guess it was last year technically, in November. We opted to put our cows on halter, which is a virtual fence system, and that has been an absolute game changer.
Oh,
We're able now to pack these cows down pretty tight and use very, very little time and energy to do it. And so I'm definitely hoping that real high density impact is going to make big changes. I would say probably this year, about March, mid March, we actually went on green grass and started rotating on green grass. And I can already tell you, especially this year, we picked a good year to start because we're already in a drought. I think as of yesterday or day before yesterday, we just broke 9 inches for the year, which in an area that has an average rainfall of about 45 inches, yeah, we're way behind. And the way it has changed how my cows eat, what they eat, and effectively conserve grass has been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So I'm definitely hoping that changing the way they graze, changing the way that I can manage their forage will change our available forage.
sure. Springtime means that we have fast growth in the grasses. Most of us struggle with keeping up with that fast growth, right? What fast growth means fast moves, but inevitably we can't move fast enough.
Yep.
At least that's been my experience and other people. Are you finding that with halter, it's easier to keep up with the grass, or are you still chasing it?
I would say a combination. It's nice to always have grass available, but at the same time, because you can graze them through a spot of a cool season, and we're not out of cool season temperatures yet, that grass is already regrown before I can get back around to it.
Sure.
So I'm hoping that we'll have a twofold effect here. One, I'm going to have more available forage for my cows, but that going into this drought, a lot of that regrowth is going to help protect the summer stuff that's going to come up and keep it viable as we get back around to it.
Yeah. I know my annual rye, and I've got lots of barley too. It started to seed out already. So I'm like, I've lost, they're still grazing through it, but the warm seasons, it's not quite warm enough yet. Usually it's around May 15th or so
Yeah.
that the warm seasons come up.
Yeah.
But I've got too many things going on that I can move them perfectly.
And that's the beauty of halter. I literally moved my cows this morning and I didn't leave the house.
Yeah.
I will definitely say that the way that my cows are performing on it is also impressive.
So their body condition is good then.
Their
The
body
best
condition is
ever.
phenomenal. I had one cow. I have a scale in my working facility, and so anytime a cow goes into the chute, they get weighed. And it's just, again, I'm a nerd. I like data, and so I keep track of that. And I have one particular cow. She's a little bit bigger cow, and she has a 3-month-old calf and has gained 15 pounds since that calf was born.
That's amazing.
I've never had that happen, not even close. In a good year, she would have lost only 15 pounds.
Sure. And that's that you shared that you're in a drought too. So you're, yeah. But okay, so that leads me, and it's something that I struggle with all the time because we average about 46, 45, 46 inches of rain. We have the grass growth, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the nutrition is there because I've had 10 inches of rainfall these 20 days of April.
Yep.
And I've seen my body condition start to back off a little bit because of all that water in the grasses.
Absolutely. Yeah. We refer to it as washy grass
Yes, it is
because
definitely.
it's water. It's predominantly water.
Yeah,
And you have to realize the amount of dry matter that they have to consume in
sure.
order to achieve adequate nutrition.
Yeah.
There's just not enough room in that gut to make that happen for a lot of cows. I will say that is a driving factor for me as far as what cattle I select phenotypically and genetically. I prefer smaller cows. I prefer cows that are as wide as they are tall. I want nice short little legs and big old bellies. I want lots and lots of depth. Why? More room for food. And the more they can pack in there, the more pounds they can pack on, and the more efficiently they can do it.
So what breed are you focusing on, or what has been your breeding strategy?
Predominantly, I stick with Angus. I started with Black Angus because
That's
Black
what
Angus
everybody
did such
does.
a great job of marketing. I still do have some of those, but it's because they were able to perform.
Sure.
The ones that couldn't perform on what we had developed as our management plan, they needed to find a place that they could perform. Since then, I have moved to Red Angus. I think that in our area of the state, they tend to do a little bit better with our weather cycles. I think that the Reds tend to be just a little bit more heat tolerant, a little bit more fly tolerant or fly resistant. So I run Red Angus bulls, even on my black cows. For me, I will not purchase any more blacks, but I prefer to retain my own heifers. And that's a combination of, I know from a financial standpoint, a lot of people don't like that plan. They think that it's more effective to sell those and then go buy more because you're going to get a calf on the ground sooner. For me personally, I prefer to know where they came from and what they can do. I don't end up with somebody else's problems. I don't have to hope that their management style previously fits into my management style. And as much as I breed for the ability to function in a intensively rotationally grazed system, I also cull on docility. There are too many good cows to have crazy cows. And so if they don't if they don't get with the program, then they have to get gone. And so I don't have a problem there because all of my heifers are, they might want to climb in your pocket. So for me, I think that it's a whole lot easier to just hang on to those heifers, and the input for me is not substantial. So for me, it works out better. That doesn't necessarily
And I
mean.
love that you're sharing it the way you're sharing it, because I do believe we're all unique. We all have different goals, right? Our context is different, our environment is different, our land is different. And to your earlier point, there is no recipe.
Nope,
And
not at all.
so we need to make it our own. I like to share that every operation is a direct reflection of the owners. You know,
Absolutely.
you can walk and okay, this is what the owners value. So I love that you're sharing that. What is your management protocol? How are you caring for the animals? You've already shared you're doing grazing. If you can just give us a little bit more detail about recovery periods and density, and when you use density, when you don't use density.
That's a good question because I still try to figure it out every day. It is ever changing because the more I try things and change things and have new technology available, the more I tend to experiment. For the most part, right now in this cool season grass, I tend to try and pack the cows pretty heavy. I would say I'm probably about 100,000 pounds to the acre.
Okay.
And I have the luxury right now of being here all the time. So I spend a lot of time walking through that grass deciding, is this enough consumed and is this enough trample? Do I want to stay here longer or do I want to move? And it always depends on exactly where I'm at. Is what is here desirable for me? Or is there something here that I want to eliminate? If there is something that I want to eliminate, I tend to try and pack my cows a little bit harder because that's going to increase the trample and it's going to increase the consumption. The cows by nature are competitive eaters. And so when you set them on, let's say, 150 acres and they can go wander about and do whatever they want to do, all those cows are going to wander around and go, ooh, ice cream. And then they ate all the ice cream and they go, ugh, Brussels
Now I've
sprouts.
got to go eat the Brussels
Yeah,
sprouts.
I don't want those. Whereas when you take that same cow and you pack her with all her sisters into half an acre and she goes, oh crap, I got to hurry up and eat her. I'm not going to get to. She doesn't care if it's Brussels sprouts, broccoli, ice cream, whatever. She's going to eat it. And so utilizing that natural instinct in cattle helps to eliminate some of those less desirables. Now, obviously, I don't push my cows to the point where I'm forcing them to try and eat things that are toxic or anything like that. But you can go to a spot where my cows have grazed and it's blatantly obvious, with the exception of the things that they won't eat that I'm not going to push them to eat, which is the handful of toxic things or pokey things. It looks like a bush hog went through there.
Sure.
They will clear it up.
And I love that you've just shared that you're using the high density to address something that's undesirable in the pasture.
Mm-hmm. Because
So,
the goal is that one, they have effectively damaged it, where it's a more of a challenge for it to regrow. It allows the things that will potentially grow a little bit faster, like a desirable grass, to go ahead and jump in there and outcompete it. And it also, as I'm sure you're well aware, cows don't raise their hand and ask to go to the bathroom. It's just whenever, wherever. And so when you pack those cows in that tight, you are effectively fertilizing that section
starting
pretty
the mineral
effectively.
cycle. Yeah, you're
And
jumping
I
the
will
mineral
say that
cycle.
is one of the big things that I noticed when we started using halter and started packing the cows down. The only places prior to that you ever really smelled manure was in places that the cows chose to loaf. So it was in barns and their preferred trees. Now you go anywhere the cows are and you smell manure. And that's free fertilizer. That's a no-brainer. And the additional benefit to that is because I'm leaving all that manure there and I am quickly jumping ahead X number of acres. I left all those flies back there too. Is it perfect? No, but by no means as far as managing fly control, but it's definitely an improvement.
Yeah. So are you seeing that shift in those areas where you've used the high density? Are you seeing the shift of the species there, or is it you haven't been doing it long enough yet to see them
It's
yet?
too early to really know.
Okay.
Like I said, we just went on halter in November.
Okay.
Obviously, we were still on hay then, and we've only been on green grass for about a month.
The cool season grasses didn't show up earlier.
They showed up, they did not show up enough to
Okay.
start grazing.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
again, we've been in a drought.
Sure.
So it was definitely slow going there for a while. We it's odd to have a winter drought, but it definitely happened.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can get some more rain this year and get some decent growth. But I will say that if we don't, I'm not nearly as concerned as I would have been in a year prior to having the ability to really high density rotationally graze.
So you mentioned you were on hay over the winter. Have you seen a reduction in the amount of hay you're having to feed because you do have that stockpile forage, or
Again, we're back to we didn't have that because we were on halter and we were not diligent in our rotational grazing because frankly, it's a challenge sometimes. It's a lot of work physically. For me personally, I got hurt in 2023 at work. So that kind of made doing much in the way of rotational grazing a challenge. So that still remains to be seen. But
Okay.
just based on what I have already seen, just this regrowth in the cool season stuff that we've already grazed, yeah, I don't think that having stockpile setback is going to be an issue at all. I fully, the long-term goal is to get off hay because obviously feed is your most expensive input.
Right. And I love that you shared that. Thank you for sharing that. Are you, because so many of our decisions are always about the animal or infrastructure, but we need to take care of ourselves. And you
Absolutely.
obviously had a limitation that we need to address in our management. And
Absolutely.
and many times we ignore that and we keep going as if everything is like it was, but that's not the case.
Absolutely. Like we talked about when we first started chatting, it's you have to be able to adapt because it changes every day. And if you can't adapt and change, then nothing is ever going to improve.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got 60 acres here and I've got another 40 that is leased, and I knew what I was doing when I came here, but I was still working a full-time job and then doing farmers market and all these other things. And within 2 years of being here, I tripled the amount of grass that I grew
Mhm.
because I was allowing for that recovery, right? I was able to graze that cool season grass 3 or 4 times. And then during the growing season, despite our usual droughty season in July and August, I was able to go through that growing season grasses, the warm season grasses, at least 4 times.
Absolutely.
And when you start adding all that up, it's easy to realize, wow, I tripled my carrying capacity. And within 3 years, I halved my hay needs. And with by year 4, I didn't have to feed any hay because I also had the cool season grasses coming in a lot stronger. So it meant that I didn't have to supplement as much. That stockpile forage in February, March starts to get pretty rank. It's still edible, but there's not much protein. So generally I had to supplement. But now that the cool seasons are coming in, I don't have that supplementation need.
Yeah. And I offer my cows supplement year round. For me personally, I offer Mix 30, which is a high fat liquid feed.
You've got
It's
it
a
on your cap.
Yeah, I do. So just shameless plug. I also am a dealer, and it's strictly because there was not a dealer around me. I couldn't get it without driving 2 hours. And so they went, "Hey, do you want to be a dealer?" I'm like, "Not really," but I do sell it. But it's a little different than most of the other liquid feeds in that it is not molasses based. It has very little urea in it. So it's not something where most of these super high protein liquid feeds push them to eat more forage because their guts are burning up. It's also a very high fat product. The fun thing about cows is that if you will provide them with enough energy and a little bit of not even moderate forage, poor forage, they can turn that into protein using the microbes in their gut. But that requires energy. And one of the big things in cattle that everyone pushes is protein, protein, protein. And cows really don't need that much protein. The highest protein requirements in cattle is between 11 and 14% when they're in peak lactation. Most of the time, it's somewhere around 7%. So, why are you free choicing a 30+% product when they don't need it? And the
Yeah.
most expensive part of your feed is protein. So all they're doing is sending that right out the back door. You might as well just have them pooping out quarters because that's what's happening. And that's the whole reason I like that product is the amount of fat in it. It's 10% fat. Fat has double the amount of calories, which is your energy, double the amount of calories per gram as either protein or a carbohydrate. And then the added benefits of fat when it comes to reproduction, your cows breeding back up, calf vigor. Believe it or not, it actually helps with heat tolerance. And in my experience, if my cows are getting all their nutritional needs met from the forage, they don't get on the liquid feed.
Sure.
And so for me, that is also a pretty good indicator of how my grasses are without doing any kind of forage testing. Because if my cows aren't hitting that liquid feed, I know the grass is good.
So dive into a little bit your statement you just said that high fat helps with heat tolerance.
Yeah. During the winter, what do we do to keep our cows warm?
Hey.
Feed them more, keep their bellies full because they produce, it's like a little furnace. They produce heat from inside. So during the summer, if you can produce more energy by something that takes less gut microbes to work, right? So you're not producing all that heat. You're staying cooler. That's
I
how that
hadn't
works.
thought of it that way. That's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Trust me, it took me a lot of reading to understand that.
That's
Um,
freaking amazing.
so that's basically it, is that instead of stoking that fire, right?
Yeah.
You're just pouring a little bit of sterno to it, if you will, instead
Sure,
of a
sure,
bonfire.
sure. Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing that. I learned something new today.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I want to go back a little bit into infrastructure only because as we talk to other people as they're transitioning to regenerative grazing, infrastructure is one of the primary concerns, specifically water.
Absolutely.
You shared you had a couple tanks. Have you done anything with setting up a water system to help you make sure optimize the grazable acres you have?
We have, and I will say that it is not a light undertaking. Again, we had that contract with NRCS for Equip, and one of our practices had to do with water. So we were able to put in a well, and we put in, gosh, probably close to 3 miles of underground water line with pop-up quick connect valves. And so on that 150 acres, I would say that within anywhere on that side of the property, you're within a water connection within 600 feet. Most of it is less. And that's not necessarily for everybody. It is, if you have the luxury of being able to do that under an equip contract, it is definitely more affordable, but it's a lot. We spent probably 2 weeks straight sitting in a skid steer with a trencher, but it's convenient now. It's
Oh, I
super
love
convenient.
my water system.
I mean,
Makes so much easier.
I actually have an application in right now to do equip on the other side of the property where the dairy was to be able to run water there. Because this year when we grazed it, I had to continually trail my cows back to water. I would set up their, in halter they call them breaks, but it's what we would call a paddock. I would set up those little paddocks and just basically not back fence. And so some of that area that was closer to water would get a little more grazed than I wanted it to be because it's easy, right? That's cows are going to eat what's easy. So, yeah, having the luxury of having water anywhere is nice. It's also really nice to keep your cows out of the pond. My cows perform better on fresh water. It is a known fact. Cows produce better on fresh water. The more water they drink, the more they eat. The more they eat, the more they gain. Having the luxury of having that on a well also keeps that water cool most of the time. It's consistently about 64 degrees coming out of the ground. In the summer, that's wonderful. Believe it or not, in the winter, that's wonderful. Cows aren't a huge fan of ice cold water. There's some studies that say when that ice cold water hits that rumen, it shocks those gut microbes and shuts some of that down. Again, because I'm a little bit nerdy and they're not pets by any stretch, but a lot of people would think that I treat them like pets. When we've had big freezes here, I do not want to rely on my ponds for water. It The chances of a cow or a calf especially wandering out onto a pond trying to find water and falling through, I can't, I don't want to deal with that. I don't think I would be able to live with myself very well if I had an option around that. And the first big freeze we had, I told my husband, I said, we got to figure out this water situation. And we didn't have electricity close enough to a trough, just used an easy old trough heater. And so we went in the shop right before a big storm and welded up this monstrosity that was basically a rocket stove that would work underwater. And so they had a heated water trough and it was warm. It was warm enough I didn't bother sticking my hand in it. And this was during, if you remember, snowpocalypse.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we had neighbors losing cows and calves over the amount of cold and the freeze and all. My cows gained weight. They
that's
were
amazing.
happy as clams. They had a windbreak and warm water, and they did nothing but stand there and eat, and all was well. So that to me was a pretty solid indicator that having comfortable drinking water, whether it be cool in the summer or warm in the winter, was something that I was going to try and make happen for them on a as much as possible.
Did you put in permanent troughs or are they movable water troughs?
On the part of the property that has water line and water infrastructure, that is all portable. The dairy side of the property is mostly permanent. I can do a little bit of moving just by moving the trough based on how far I can get that water hose out there, but most of that's permanent.
Yeah,
Hopefully
yeah.
to be changed in the not terribly distant future, but that remains to be
There
seen.
you go. Yeah, I didn't use equip money because I was impatient. I didn't wait. I didn't want to apply and then wait. And so I just invested the money and I put in a water system. Like you, I had to drill a new well and I put risers every 300 feet. So anywhere I am on the place and I have two 100-foot hoses. So the water trough can be 200 feet from the riser and it's
Yep,
movable. And for me, and I believe with you too, it just gives us more flexibility of how we can manage our grazing, you know,
absolutely.
and set up the paddock size and depending whether we want them in landscape function or in performance function.
And that's just it, is that the more you make things flexible, the more it makes it available for you to be adaptable to whatever you need.
Sure.
And at my house, we tend to over engineer everything. So inadvertently, that's what we did. And it turns out that it's worked really, really well.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So biggest challenge that you've experienced in this transition of yours?
Biggest challenge. I think probably one of the biggest challenges is patience,
Yes.
because I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how big a check you can write. Agriculture takes time.
Yeah. Nature takes time, right? She'll
Yep.
do it in her own time.
Yep. There are definitely things you can pay for to jumpstart it, but you can't make it happen overnight. Grass is not going to grow overnight. You can make it rain now, but you can't determine the weather. You have to be able to work with those things and be happy when you see them, and don't necessarily be upset when it's not the change you wanted. You have to be able to accept that and then go, okay, we got thrown a curveball, so let's try this. I think
It's a way to it's a lesson to learn so that you can then adjust and make another decision.
absolutely. Yeah, this is mostly adventure and decision making, because it's a different decision every day. It's
Sure.
a sometimes multiple times a day. How am I going to move these cows to make sure that they have all the things they need, but that it's also going to benefit next year? And you're rolling the dice, hoping that your decision's right. And you're not going to find out until next year. The more you do it, the more educated those decisions become. But even the people that have been making these decisions for years and years still mess up.
I know. I messed up the other day.
Yeah.
I had them in a pasture where I've got some of the rye that has gone to seed, and this was about 5 days ago. And I put them into a pasture that I had been wanting to mow because I just haven't got to it. And there's some tall lignified grasses, but there was some grasses that are trying to come up. And because I couldn't get it mowed, I decided, oh, I'm just going to move the animals. I had them there for 4 days, and I started recognizing they're losing condition. They're struggling. And I had a workshop here last week, and I had some friends come out. And as we were walking down there, we walked down the lane, and my girlfriend's Christine, look at this rye, it's going to seed. You need to optimize this, especially if the animals are losing condition over there. And I'm like, of course.
It is. And when you've got just easy numbers, you've got 100 acres that needs to be grazed, and you've got 20 cows.
Right.
How do you pick which acre to start with?
Right.
Sometimes you just have to go, I don't know, jump in
Sure.
and figure it out as you go.
Sure. And what I've loved hearing from you is that you're willing to experiment, but you're also experimenting what I like to call a safe to fail. You're not doing it over the entire property. You're using it a small property. To your example, what you shared with your husband, on the 1 acre, you put the sheep in to try it, to see if it works or not. I love that concept, and I wish people would hear that, because we don't have to do it on the 100 acres. We can do it on an acre. We can do it on 5 acre parcel, and then just sit and watch and see what happens.
And for me, at the end of the day, animal welfare is always the priority. And so if something that I'm doing is not benefiting my stock, then I need to change that.
Sure.
Just because it's something I read that's the new latest and greatest, and if you do this, you'll get X, Y, and Z, and my cattle aren't thriving, they're losing body condition, they're stressed, they're whatever it happens to be, I'm not going to do that anymore. You have to determine where your priorities are and stick to those guns.
Jojo, are you doing this for profit? Do you have another source of income? Is this your main source of income? Are you supporting yourself?
We, it started out as a hobby. Like I said, you get acreage, and what do? Buy cows. It quickly became, okay, the cows have to at least support themselves, which they did. And it has transitioned into, okay, let's see if we can make a profit from it. At this point, I am officially retired. My husband does still work, so we do still have off ranch income. The properties that we bought all have houses, and some of them had multiple houses. We have since renovated those houses and rent them out. We're able to rent at I'm not going to say a premium, but definitely at the top end of the market, because there is a large subsect of the population that wants to live that idyllic ranch lifestyle, but either don't have the funds to buy that or don't want the labor involved in actually doing it. So we do have rent houses on the property. So that's an additional source of income. Of course, the feed business, we never set out to make a living at it. We started it strictly to be able to feed our cattle. And then it has grown into a business where we're able to help others feed their cattle. And we keep a very tight profit margin. And so we're able to offer it at an affordable price because we're not trying to make a living at it. So we definitely believe in diversification, because at any given time, markets change. All markets change.
All
Cattle
markets
market,
change.
real estate market, everything changes. And so typically they don't all change at once. So if you've got at least one thing that's going good, you're all right.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, diversification definitely helps. The cattle market is beautiful right now if you own cattle and or sell, but not a good market to start working with cattle, but unless you want to do buy and selling, but
Even that's pretty scary.
even that's pretty risky. Yeah, having that diversity is important.
Yeah.
Jojo, one last question before we end our conversation. Any words of wisdom, advice that you haven't shared that you want to share to the listeners?
Be willing to try new things. Don't get stuck in the this is the way we've always done it paradigm. Be willing to at least listen to people that you typically would not have taken advice from before. A lot of times those tend to be some of the younger crowd that is willing to try new things, and it needs to be fun. If it's not fun for you and you don't enjoy it, go find something else. because this lifestyle, because it is a lifestyle, is difficult in and of itself. There's really no days off. There's not much in the way of vacations, because it's not something that you can just walk away from and leave. And so if it's not something that you enjoy pretty much every day, then don't do it. Pass it to somebody who will, because the more you enjoy it, the more that you're willing to invest into it in time and energy and experiences, and the better it will become.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for spending this time with me.
Absolutely.
And maybe we'll do a part 2.
I'll let you know after we've had a year on halter and how
There we go. There we go.
changes
Yeah, a
drastically.
follow-up, the before and after halter. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for, again, Jojo. Enjoyed our time together.
As well.
Thanks for listening to Regenerative Agriculture, Thriving as a Modern Rancher. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, share with fellow ranchers, and leave a review. Together we can regenerate our lands, our profits, and our lives. Until next time, keep thriving.